Well, business lobby groups have called the Kenya Revenue Authority to halt the rollout of the 1% minimum tax set out to take effect on January 1st, 2021. The tax, introduced through the Finance Act 2020, is a base income tax payable by all persons, regardless of whether or not they make profit. KRA says the tax is aimed at expanding the tax base. Tonight, we talk to the taxman about fears raised by business owners and how it will affect small businesses.
Hello and welcome to this interactive segment. We are going to talk about taxes, the minimum tax, and remember the Finance Act of 2020 that is coming online in January 2021. And don't worry, we will debunk this and also talk about the uncertainties rather that are surrounding this particular tax. And to talk about that, we are joined by Wanja Wang'ondu, who is the Assistant Manager here at Kenya Revenue Authority, Assistant Manager Taxpayer Services. And welcome to the program. We are excited that you are joining us today.
Thank you, Alan.
Indeed. So just to clear things out for us and our viewers, what is this Finance Act 2020 and why has it brought a lot of interest?
Minimum tax was introduced or was passed in the Finance Act of 2020, and it will be introduced with effect from 1st of January 2021. So in other words, it's coming month. What is this tax about? Now, the tax obligations that we have in place, we have two types for income tax, whereby you decide your business to be at a turnover tax. At a turnover tax, you will be charged 1% of your sales every month, and you do not pay any other income tax from that business. It's 1% of your gross sales. Now, on the other hand, if you do not want to be at a turnover tax, then you make the option of being under income tax. Now, when you are under income tax, that is where you determine the taxes on the profits. So you take your sales, you less your cost of sales, you come up with the taxable profit, and now you, with the current rate of 25%, you subject now the profit to the 25%. Now, it's at the income tax that we say, since instead of you wait for the year to end, then you pay your taxes as the year proceeds. It's called paying the taxes in installments. When are these installments payable? Installments, the first installment is payable on or before the 20th of the 4th month. The second installment on or before the 20th of the 6th month. The third one on or before the 20th of the 9th month. And the last installment on or before the 20th of the 12th month. Then, when the year ends, the trader is able to prepare the accounts. And once the trader has prepared the accounts for the year, they will now be able to see what was the tax payable for the year 2020. Then less the installment taxes that were paid. Any tax that was not paid now, it's called balance of tax. It's payable on or before the last day of the 4th month in the following year. So in other words, if a company or an entity has the year running from January to December, their balance of tax will be payable on or before 30th of April. So that's how income tax operates. So then, what is minimum tax? Minimum tax is coming in to affect the persons who are in the income tax regime. Remember, we talked about those ones who are in the turnover tax regime. Those ones will not be affected by minimum tax in any way. So now, these ones who are in the income tax regime now, once now they compute what is the installment tax payable. The way installment taxes are determined, since you are paying tax in the course of the year that you are operating, they are projected from the prior year. And that's why, come the end of the year, if the total installment taxes paid were higher than the actual tax that should be paid, then refunds are given. Or the taxpayer may prefer, don't give me the refunds, but utilize that of a payment to pay my other taxes. So now, minimum tax is coming in to say this. The date you pay installment tax, consider the installment tax payable at 1% of the gross turnover. So it's saying, once you see, take for example, your installment tax payable, maybe the first installment is 100,000. And your your minimum tax, which is 1% of the sales, is 110,000. Then it's saying you will not pay the minimum tax, you will not pay the installment tax of 100,000. In that case, you will pay the minimum tax, which is 110,000. So the higher of the two. So we will be comparing the installment tax payable versus 1% of the sales, which is the minimum tax, and the higher of the two is what is payable. So I believe by that now you have seen it's a tax that's coming in to cap or to regulate a tax that's already there. Yes.
Well, there are many businesses and business people, especially various organizations that represent small businesses. They agree that collecting taxes is important. It's good for nation building. But they also say and bring out the talk of the timeliness of bringing this tax. They say that during the COVID pandemic period, it wouldn't be the best time to bring this tax. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I get the point, the aspect of the pandemic, and for sure it has affected all of us in a big way. But I also wish to note one thing. This is not the first pandemic to hit us. And Alan, you can be sure, there are other pandemics that have hit us. And there is no one time that people will ever say, this is the right time of introducing a tax. Or for you, Alan, do you think there's that time that you would say, this is the best time for me to to start paying this tax? There's no one time that we will say that. So what is there is, my dear Kenyans, let's look at it from the angle of what we will get from this. Because even as the COVID has hit, the government needs more resources so that it can be able to take care of us in a better way during this COVID period. Yeah, so there's no one time that it will ever be said, this is the right time of introducing a tax. So let's embrace it and see how we move with it. One thing, let me note, maybe the person stating so is somebody who has been evading tax. Because if you look at it critically, for the small traders or for the people whose turnover is up to 50 million, they're in the turnover tax regime. And the turnover tax regime attracts tax at 1% of the gross turnover. So it has actually been there. Now, minimum tax has been attracting tax the other businesses that are not in turnover tax have been in the income tax. And that's where the tax has been on the profits. But basically, you will see, so unless this person was evading or was not, in any way, that's what I would say. Let's see how we are able to pay, because the 1% minimum tax is so closely related with the turnover tax, and people have actually been paying. That's a bit easy, Mr. Allen. Remember, minimum tax is being paid the same dates that installment tax is payable. We have the data of the persons who have been paying installment tax. So it's basically now to look into, has this person taken care of paying the higher of the two, whether it's the minimum tax or the installment tax, because the higher of the two is what will be payable. And it's still payable at the installment on or before the installment tax date. The taxman's work is purely to implement a law that has been passed by Parliament. And so anybody who feels aggrieved by any law that's in place ought to do the proposal, and the proposal can be forwarded to Parliament. And it's good to state what is your other proposal. There's also that angle of providing the proposals to the taxman. Let me give you an example. The taxation of the rental income. The residential property owners came in and said, it's getting difficult for us to pay the rental income tax after 3 months because we get the rent every month. Bring in a tax for us that we'll be able to pay every month, and then lower it a bit. And that's how the residential rental income tax came in at 10%. of the gross rent received. So even for business people, forward any proposal that you may be having. Now, I also want to note something. The law was already passed on that the minimum tax is getting introduced with effect from 1st January. So unless there's any other law, 1st of January, the taxman will start imposing or checking whether the minimum tax is being paid by the persons who ought to be paying it. So, and then you'd also realize even most like how the laws are passed in Kenya, there is a possibility that it will take up, even if there is any change that may come later. So my advice to the business persons is, let's abide by the regulations. But if you have any proposals, forward it. When it will be considered, the law will be changed and it will be made public about the changes. You notice that at any given point of time, when there is a pandemic, there's a team that gets more favored than another. Like, look at the people maybe who are in sectors that relate to like the production of equipment. Like the persons who have been selling, the people who have been selling the masks. There was no business for masks in Kenya before. It was so minimal because it was in the hospitals and just in few sectors. Today, the purchase of the masks is by everybody. So every pandemic will always have some sectors that will be doing better than others. And this COVID time is also, we can see a similar trend. There are some sectors that are actually doing better than the others. Yeah, so it has not affected everybody.
Final word now then. What is the clarion call? What is that message that you'd like to tell Kenyans that will put them at ease when it comes to the enactment of these new taxes that's coming online in January 2021?
Thank you, Alan. Now, dear Kenyans, minimum tax is being introduced with effect from 1st of January 2020. And I just wish to state that it is being introduced and it's payable the same time that the installment tax is payable. I want to make it very clear that you are not paying both installment tax and minimum tax. No. You are computing the minimum tax as 1% of the sales, comparing it with the installment tax payable. And the higher of the two is what is payable. So note, you are not paying twice. You are paying one, the higher of the two, and it's payable on or before the installment dates. So the other thing about minimum tax is, I wish to note, there are persons who are exempted from minimum tax. And number one, we are talking about the persons whose income attracts a withholding tax that's final. Employment income will not be attracting minimum tax. Rental income will also not be attracting. And we also have the income from extractive industries. It will also not be attracting minimum tax. And the persons who are in the turnover tax regime, minimum tax will not be imposed on them. So if you belong to those sectors or those kinds of income, note that minimum tax will not apply to you. When we look at income tax is payable on the profit. And installment taxes are projected as per the profit of the prior year. So in this case, minimum tax is coming in and saying even the persons who are making losses or whose installment tax payable is lower than 1% of their gross sales, they need to pay at least the lowest amount payable will be the 1% of the sales, which is minimum tax. Now, in a way, it may affect the businesses and mainly the ones that were operating on loss positions. But a business that has been operating on profit positions and the installment tax payable is higher than the minimum tax, there is no effect. In fact, that one will just continue as it was. The only thing, there will be that computation of that. Now, that effect is there. But Alan, I want us also to look at it from this point. There's the aspect of growing our nation. You know, it is until you and I contribute to the tax kitty that we will see developments in our land. Like today, if you travel along Wayakiwe, Mombasa Road, there's a lot of developments taking place. And this development, you and I know paying taxes sometimes is not what you want to do every second, but we must do it, or we will have to do it if we want to see our nation moving forward. And there are some of those services that you and I will not be able to provide as individuals. It's only the government that will be in a position to provide, like the aspect of security, the aspect of the major infrastructures. So for that, let's look into that common good of what will come when we contribute.
Well, and there you have it. We hope you have got some value and understood the differences between those two aspects, especially when it comes to the installment payment of tax, the turnover tax and the minimum tax, and also the Finance Act of 2020. We have been speaking to Wanja Wang'ondu, who is the Assistant Manager, Taxpayer Services here at Kenya Revenue Authority. My name is Alan Aoko. That's it for us.